I'm here in a 5-star hotel in Sydney, and this room was paid for by someone else. I've been flown in to Sydney to speak about e-commerce at one of Australia's biggest retail events, and I've just had a bit of a pinch me moment, which is why I wanted to do this video. Not only is it absolutely unbelievable that someone's paying me to talk about e-commerce, the thing that I like to talk about, and putting me up in beautiful accommodation and flying me here, my online store has just turned over $1.14 million for the year, and that's pretty amazing. Now, I'm not doing this to brag. I just wanted to sort of sit back and go, well, how did I get here? 15 years ago, did I see myself being an e-commerce speaker on stages and running a store that was doing some crazy numbers? Absolutely not. I want to share with you today where I was 15 years ago to where I am now, everything that I've been through, and I want you to realize that what I had planned 15 years ago to what I have now is completely different. However, the steps that I took from the last 15 years led me to this moment. The reason I want to do this video is to show you that no matter what plan you have in place and no matter what path that you go down, there's milestones within that journey that are actually going to lead you to where you're meant to be. So even though it might feel hard right now, you're not sure what you're doing, you might feel confused, you are where you're meant to be. And that's really what came to me tonight, that I am where I'm meant to be, even though this isn't where I thought I was going to be. So I'm going to take you on a little bit of a background history on what happened when I finished school, the career that I went on, and how on earth did I get to become an e-commerce guy, speaking on stages and running amazing stores. I grew up in the outer western suburbs of Melbourne in a pretty low socioeconomic area. I was a family of 6. I was the youngest in the family. Both my parents worked full time. In fact, my dad worked about 80 hours a week. He was a chef, which meant he was always out when other people were celebrating, which meant I didn't get lots of time with him. But when I do get time with him, we make sure we make it worth it, and he gives me full attention. So that was where I was growing up. Now, we didn't have lots of money, but we had everything we needed. But I didn't actually think my life would become an entrepreneur or business owner or anything like that. I just sort of have a normal 9 to 5, maybe following my dad's footsteps, maybe become a chef. I didn't really know. So when I got to senior school, I had lots of options and I thought I'd just try a bit of everything and see what landed. I was into gaming at the time, so I figure, hey, why don't I try and get a career in gaming, making games, maybe playing games. So I tried to do as many subjects as I could that led me to that. So I did a little bit of art, I did a bit of graphic design, I did some IT, I did some media, I did some business studies, a bit of everything to see, is this going to give me the pathway into gaming? And that's what I thought I was going to be, as a professional game writer or game developer or something like that. Now, come the end of my senior school, there was no pathways to be a game developer. So I ended up getting a traineeship in information technology. And what that meant was I got paid $150 a week for 12 months to crawl under desks, plug in and out cables, and tell people to restart their computer. It was not the most exciting job in the world, but you know what? It paid the wages, and I realized that it was going to be the good career move for me, good stable job in a growing industry. So I stayed in that job for about 5 years, and I realized it just wasn't going to be the future job for me. So I thought maybe there's time that I can get back into this gaming career that I have. So I found a course which was called an advanced diploma in multimedia, and it had this really small subject which was called game design. Now, that game design wasn't all it was cracked up to be, and it was designing games in Flash. So anyone that knows Flash will realize it ain't a good place to develop games. However, that's where it unlocked my next step in my journey that got me down a different path. There was a module all around web design. So I got really into web design and creating websites, and I realized that I could actually sell websites to people. So I created a couple of websites and I sold them to our local clubs and some cricket clubs and some sporting clubs. And I realized, hey, I can make websites because no one else can do it and people will pay me for it. So while in my IT career, my first little side hustle was born, making websites. Now, that wasn't really one of those things that I could quit my full-time job and become a full website agency. It just wasn't that sort of business for me, so I just used it as a way to fund my hobby that I had with cars and go traveling with my girlfriend, who is now my wife, and I had a lot of fun, and it was great. However, I still felt like it wasn't enough. I didn't love the IT career. I was enjoying the web design, so I decided that I didn't want someone else to be in control of my life. So I decided to take control of my life and go all in and try and sell as many websites as possible. I partnered up with an old friend and we launched our first web development business. He was the sales guy, I was the web guy, and we didn't do too bad. We ran it for around 12 months, didn't pay ourselves, went completely broke, but we actually did end up selling that business for like 40 grand. So we split the $40,000 between us and we got $20,000 each. So $20,000 for 12 months work, we probably ended up in negative. Okay, so that was my first business venture. However, even though we did end up in negative, we felt like we're entrepreneurs and we went down this next path. So he went and started a little app agency selling iPhone apps, and I decided to start a hair salon. Yeah, a hair salon. How weird, right? Because I don't know if you know, I don't have any hair. Now, the reason I started a hair salon is I thought, I don't want to own a business that I have to work in. So why don't I get a business that I have no chance of working in, right? So there's no chance I can work in a hair salon. I don't have hair and I don't know how to cut hair. So I thought, great, put my entrepreneurial hat on and go for it. So my wife and I both ran that business. She worked behind the counter and I did some of the marketing. Now, we couldn't actually have that business sustain itself. So my wife had to start working in a cafe and I started doing freelancing, again, doing some web design sort of stuff for people while the business sort of run itself. What we did realize that because we can't work in the business, we're heavily reliant on staff. And if we don't have staff that can cut hair, the business doesn't make any money. And we quickly realized that this business was not going to be golden ticket to success. So after 3 years, we decided to sell that business and we ended up selling it, but we came out at a loss of about $110,000. So we were down $110,000. We'd run this business for 3 years, and not only that, we were expecting our first baby at that time. So $100,000 in debt, brand new baby, business didn't work out, wife's working in a cafe, I'm freelancing, and we basically thought, you know what, why did I quit my job? So I decided to go back to work. And I gave up this entrepreneurial journey because it all became too hard. First business, we lost money. Second business, we lost money. New baby on the way. I needed some money in the bank. So I actually did get a job as a e-commerce coordinator. I'd had some experience building an e-commerce store with some of the websites I'd done, but they were really small, tiny little things. However, this company needed someone that had even just the smallest amount of experience because there was no one out there that did it. So I took this job as an e-com coordinator, not really knowing what I was doing. And those were the days where there was no tutorials, there was no books, there was no gurus. I don't even think there was YouTube at that stage, right? And these were Magento sites. And if anyone's ever worked on a Magento site, those things are big, clunky beasts that you need to work in. And I wasn't a web developer, I was a designer. So I did all the pretty stuff, not the techie stuff. Anyway, I treated this as my next apprenticeship. So this was where I was in there and I was all in on learning because I knew if I could crack the code to this could be my next career. I had a little bit of creativity, a little bit analytical, a bit of business. I think I could make this work. So for the next 2.5 years, I absolutely grinded and learned every single thing I could within that company. So I was learning on someone else's dollar. Now that was the absolute secret to getting into that industry. And this was a huge retailer. This was a big company in Australia, which meant if I got some credentials there, I could go anywhere. So I worked there for about 2.5 years, and at the end of that, we'd launched 5 e-commerce stores. Their entire e-commerce business was doing about $3 to $4 million. I think the entire company was doing a couple of $100 million, so this was a very small portion. But from a standing start for someone that had no experience, we got some pretty good results. Now, I was really good at building and growing businesses, but running them, operating them bored the absolute heck out of me. So I decided that it was time for me to move on and see whether or not I could do the same thing again. I jumped into another huge Australian retailer. They had like 150 stores. They were also selling into New Zealand, but their online presence was tiny and they needed someone to come in and grow it. So I took everything I learned at my pre-apprenticeship in the last company and I came in here and I spun this store up, and within about 2.5 years, we'd got it to 8 figures. Built a little team, customer service, digital marketing, operations, all that sort of stuff. Built it up and same thing again. I got bored and I realized great at growing, not so excited about operating them. So then I went on to my third one and I got to another global fashion retailer this time, and most people will know the brand, and I looked after their Australian division, and same sort of thing, very small business here in Australia. I built a team, grew it up, and so on and so on. The moral of the story is I realized I could do this for other people, so why couldn't I do it for myself? And I wanted to take back control of my life again, so I decided that I was going to try and put money where my mouth is. So I started another side hustle and I started an eBay store. I imported these little AirPod cases and watch straps for Apple watches, and I sold them on eBay. Now the thing is, when you sell $5 to $20 products on eBay, it ain't gonna make you rich anytime soon, and you're gonna have to sell lots of them to be able to quit your job. And I realized that super quick. So I decided to start a Shopify store as well, so I had 2 streams of income. The Shopify store went okay. We sold a few extra products as well, and we ended up making maybe $1,000 a week across everything from the Shopify and the eBay business. That was not going to be enough for me to quit my job. By this stage, I'd had another baby, so we've got 2 kids that are here, and I needed to make sure I could pay the bills. So I decided, crazy me, was I took the money that I'd made from those 2 stores, which is about $9,000, and I bought an existing e-commerce store. And this is the one that I run now. Now that store wasn't doing that much revenue, but it was set up and it had the bones that I knew that if I could do the same thing that I did on the other 3 stores that made those businesses rich, that possibly I could do the same thing. And my one goal was, how could I get this store to $1 million? So my goal was to get it from where it was and do $1 million worth of revenue. That was my one single goal. So I went to work, and within about 3 months, I got it to around 25K a month, I think it was, which was just enough for me to be able to quit my day job and go full time on this. And it was probably the best thing I ever did. So I'd done my apprenticeship over sort of the last, what would it be, 6 years. In fact, when I was doing that, I was even ranked one of the top 50 in e-commerce in Australia. So I knew I sort of knew what I was doing. So I took that, what I learned, I applied it to this. 6 years later, I had my own store doing about 25K a month. So the journey was pretty long. IT, ecom, my own store, okay? Now, when I quit my job, I then went all in on this, and I started scaling this like you wouldn't believe. And I was just trying to go from 30 to 40 to 50 to 60, and I just kept growing and growing and growing. And I was relentless in trying to get it to $1 million in revenue. And within about 18 months, we ticked over the $1 million mark. Now that was all well and good. I had the revenue number, it was beautiful. The only problem was there was zero profit. In fact, there was negative profit. I think we had tanked about 50K into this business. And the reason for that was all we were focused on was revenue. So there was my next lesson. So I'd lost $100,000 in my first business. I was losing $50,000 in this business. So if I wanted to become an entrepreneur, to prove that I needed to get this back on track. So I streamlined the infrastructure. And what I mean by that was, it was a dropshipping business which has really low margins. Ads were costing me too much money. So I decided to streamline all the stuff that wasn't costing me money, bring some stock in on consignment. What that means is the supplier gives you the stock and you don't have to pay for it straight away, which I was very lucky with that. And then I was able to get some cash flow in the business, which meant I didn't need to do drop shipping. I could ship my own stock and my margins had increased. While doing that, I was learning how to do ads, I was learning how to do email marketing, I was refining my SEO, and I was really using sort of the system that I teach, which is the traffic trifecta of getting ads, getting people, and getting traffic from other sources. So come 12 months later, we did another $1 million, no problem, and it was profitable. And now we're on track to turn over that $1 million in sort of 7 months' time, and we're operating at a great profit. Now, what I want to sort of share with you about that story is that if I had have given up within the first 12 months, I lost $50,000. Yes, we hit the $1 million mark, but if I had have given up there and not tried to fix it, would I have gotten to where I would have? No. If I had have given up when I failed at the hairdressing business, if I had have given up when we lost money on the web development agency, if I had have given up when I didn't get the gaming career that I wanted, then I would never have got here, because all the paths that I took led me to this moment. I went from IT apprenticeship to doing multimedia, to selling websites on the side, to starting an agency, to losing lots of money, to starting a hair salon, to losing more money, to going back to work, doing another apprenticeship all over again, then putting my last savings on this business, and then losing $50,000. And then now the business slowly ticked over, but it took me around 10 years to get there, right? So what I really want you to think about is where you are now is the right place for you. And some people's journey might take 2 years, some might take 5, some might take 10, but it's still a journey, and you just need to be present throughout the whole journey and realize what you're doing now is leading you to where you're going to get to, okay? Don't always think about where you want to get to. Have a think about what you're doing now and enjoy for where you are now, because when you get there, it's going to be a whole lot more fun. So I hope the story of my journey, of where I am, me reflecting, pinching myself a little bit of what's happening right now, has inspired you to realize that, you know, it's not a quick journey, it's a long journey, but when you get there, it is worth it. And then before you realize it, everything that you've done before you has led you to this moment.